Muhammad XII, the last Sultan of the Kingdom of Granada, surrendered to the Catholic monarchs, Isabella and Ferdinand. The Reconquista, as it was known, brought the Moorish civilization in Spain and Al-Andalus as a political entity to an end.
It's the end, really, of a whole period, the end of the Muslim Spain after almost 8 centuries of presence of a culture here. Because the Catholic kings arrived with the Inquisition, so they expelled the Jews in 1492. In 1500, they obliged the Muslims to convert themselves into the Catholic religion.
Sometimes forcibly.
Oh, completely. If not, they would be expelled. The family of Leo Africanus, Al-Hassan al-Wazan, they moved, like many aristocratic families.
Yeah.
Under the terms of the city's surrender, Muslims were given a 3-year period to either convert or to leave the city unmolested, taking their wealth and belongings with them. Leo's family chose to flee rather than to convert. Many Muslims made the same choice. They headed for Africa, and the new chapter in Leo's life was about to begin. When he made this crossing with his parents, it must have seemed that the narrow Strait of Gibraltar marked the boundary between persecution and safety. But in reality, the world he was about to enter was no less volatile.
He was heading for Fez, then the capital city of northern Morocco, where he had really powerful connections. His uncle worked for the Sultan.
The kingdom of Fez was under threat from 3 different enemies: the Spaniards and the Portuguese from the north, the Ottomans from the east, and from the south, from a rising power that would one day rule all of Morocco and most of West Africa.
These were the forces that would define his future and propel him into a life of travel, adventure, and even espionage.
Fez in the 1490s must have been a busy and crowded city, and newcomers would have had to struggle to find a foothold.
Leo's family was just one of thousands of refugees arriving from Spain. They were looking for a new house, a new job, and a new life. Many Fezzi families, including mine, trace their roots back to Al-Andalus.
But Leo and his family could have found a refuge in the house of his father's brother, who was well established in Fez.
Assalamu alaikum, Si Anas. Assalamu alaikum, Hajj. And this is my brother Kamal. Assalamu alaikum.
And although it was a strange city, in a strange country, it may have felt almost like returning home. He had family waiting to welcome him. He would have heard Arabic, the language of his Andalusian childhood spoken everywhere.
A good Fezzi couscous.
And even the customs and the food were familiar.
Looks good. One of the things Leo was talking about in his book is a good Fezzi couscous.
In winter, they have cooked meat together with a kind of food called couscous.
She's saying that it's best to do couscous with your own hands rather than with any cutlery because it tastes better with hands.
Which is made of damp flour in the shape of small pepper grains, cooked in a peculiar vessel full of holes called a kskas.
Okay, can I take the couscous now?
After it is steamed, they add butter to it and then sauce.
Okay. Ooh,
they eat these all together from the same dish.
Let's go and eat.
Despite the similarities, Morocco was a new country. And like exiles everywhere, the Andalusians kept a separate identity. keeping their distinctive names and customs alive to this day. Throughout his life, Leo would spend years living in new cultures, absorbing their ways, but keeping his own identity strong and clear. When we were young, you used to tell us that our ancestors came from Andalusia. Were they kicked out after the fall of Granada?
True. According to what our ancestors told us, we do indeed come from Andalusia. After they were expelled from Andalusia, they came to settle down in Fez, in a place called Benadis. We have kept our Andalusian traditions and we still consider ourselves as such.
As-Sa'igh, our surname, means goldsmith. Is this because our ancestors worked as goldsmiths or traders of gold?
Yes, that's true, but they were not only makers of gold, but makers of knowledge.
Many of the Andalusian refugees came from educated families, and it was no accident that they chose to settle in Fez. It's home to one of the greatest universities of the world, Al-Qarawiyyin.
السلام عليكم دكتور لباس بخير حلباس
Professor Mustafa Ben Sdira has spent his career studying the life of Leo and knows the city that he lived in better than anyone.
I think that Leo probably walked on the ground that we are walking on now, because in his book, The Description of Africa, he talks about Al-Bu'naniyya, which is up the road from here.
Do you mean the famous Al-Bu'naniyya school?
Indeed, the famous school that was built by Sultan Abu Inan, where Leo said that he studied.
There are almost 200 schools in Fez for the instruction of children. The schoolmasters teach their children to write and read, not out of a book, but from a great chart. Every day, they chant one sentence of the Quran, and having read all the way through, they begin it again, repeating it often until they have most firmly committed it to memory.
When he'd learned the Quran by heart, an achievement most boys managed by the age of 14, Leo enrolled at Al-Qarawiyyin University.
According to Guinness Book of Records, this is the oldest university for higher education in the world. It is not only a mosque, but a place of teaching. The way it was built is so detailed and fine. Leo described it in big detail. He talked about the archways and the water fountains inside it. When you go inside and read his book, you find everything in detail in front of you.
Around the walls of the mosque are pulpits, out of which scholars who are people.
Plenty of tourists come from all over the world to come and see Fez and Old Medina and Al-Qarawiyyin University, which is world famous. But I'm quite sure that a tiny minority of these people have read Leo's description of Fez. And it's amazing because what Westerners know about Fez, they must have learned it from Leo,